Assalamu alaikum. My name is Dr. Zunaira Jameel and the topic of today's discussion is disorders of calcium balance. First, we are going to discuss some of the gains and losses of calcium in the body. The major dietary sources of calcium for our body are milk and different dairy products, but only 30 to 50% of the dietary calcium is absorbed throughout the GI tract. Other than that is lost into the stools. The amount of calcium that is absorbed is then stored in the body. 99% of storage of calcium occurs in the bones, and only 1% occurs in other parts of the body, like inside the cells or in extracellular fluid. And the excretion of calcium occurs through kidney. Most of the calcium that goes into the kidney is reabsorbed, like 60 to 65% is reabsorbed through proximal tubule, 15 to 20% through loop of Henle, 5 to 10% through distal convoluted tubule, and hence only about 10% is lost by urine. The regulation of calcium balance is mainly done by parathyroid hormone and vitamin D. Now I am going to tell you about some of the forms of calcium that are present in the extracellular fluid. There are three basic forms. Number one is the protein bound form, number two is the complex form, number three is the ionized form. Ionized form is the most common form that is present in the extracellular fluid, that is about 50% of the calcium is in the form of ionized form. This form is free to leave the vascular compartment and hence it performs most of the cellular functions in our body. After ionized form, the second most common is the protein bound form, that is about 40% of the extracellular calcium. This form is bound to albumin and hence cannot pass through capillary walls. And then the third one is the complex calcium, that is about 10% of the calcium, which is bound with citrate, sulfate and phosphate. Now, as I told you before, that ionized calcium is the most common form and it is the only one that can pass through the membranes. So this is the one which actively participates in the bodily functions. What different functions does it perform? These include enzymatic reactions, maintenance of membrane potentials and neuronal excitability, contraction in skeletal, cardiac and smooth muscles, release of neurotransmitters, hormones and chemical messengers. It is involved in cardiac contraction and automaticity, and it is also involved in the blood clotting pathways. Now, the basic topic of our discussion is the disorders of calcium balance. The first of the disorders is hypocalcemia. Hypocalcemia means a plasma calcium level of less than 8.5 milligram per deciliter or less than 2.1 millimole per liter. What are the different causes of hypocalcemia? These different causes are classified into four basic categories. Number one is impairment in mobilization from bone stores. Number two is abnormal losses from kidney. Number three, increased protein binding or chelation. Number four, soft tissue sequestration. I'm going to explain all these four in the next table. So this is a table from your book. On the left are shown different causes of hypocalcemia. So we are going to discuss them one by one. Number one is the impaired ability to mobilize calcium from bone. So as I told you before, that bone is the main storage point of calcium. 99% of our calcium in our body is stored in the bone. So whenever the body has the inability to mobilize that calcium from the bones, the serum calcium levels would become low. So I told you before, parathyroid hormone is the main hormone responsible for maintaining the serum calcium levels. So whenever there is hypoparathyroidism, that means there is decreased parathyroid hormone, so serum calcium level could not be increased because parathyroid hormone is the hormone which brings calcium from the bones. And the other example would be resistance to the actions of parathyroid hormone. This is called pseudo-hypoparathyroidism. What it means is that parathyroid hormone is present, but the target organ or the bone has developed a resistance to the action of parathyroid hormone, and hence it cannot resorb bone and hence cannot increase the serum calcium levels. The third example given is hypomagnesemia. What hypomagnesemia means is it's actually a deficiency of magnesium in a body. It has the same effect as the above two. It basically inhibits the action of parathyroid hormone. So even though parathyroid hormone is present, its action could not be elicited. The second main point is decreased intake or absorption. So whenever there is a decreased intake or absorption of calcium, it does not result in directly into hypocalcemia. As I've told you before, hypocalcemia is actually a decreased of plasma calcium levels. But whenever there is a decreased intake or absorption problem, most of the calcium that is affected is the stored calcium. So most of these the points under this heading would come under the storage problems of calcium. They would not directly cause hypocalcemia. So these include malabsorption, vitamin D deficiency, and vitamin D deficiency could either be directly due to decreased vitamin D intake or due to failure of activation of vitamin D. As you know, vitamin D is activated both in kidney and in liver, so the diseases of both liver and kidney would result in vitamin D deficiency. And the medications that impair the activation of vitamin D, like phenytoin, could also result in decreased vitamin D. Coming on to the next point, abnormal renal losses. So in case of renal failure, we see that there could be presence of hypocalcemia and hyperphosphatemia. Now you have to understand this point that calcium and phosphate have quite opposing management in the body. Like parathyroid hormone has an antagonistic effect on both. Parathyroid hormone increases the level of calcium in a body but decreases the level of phosphate. So in renal failure cases, we see hypocalcemia and hyperphosphatemia. The next category is increased protein binding or chelation. In case of increased pH in our body or in case of increased fatty acids, we observe an increased protein binding of calcium. Whenever there is an increased protein binding of calcium, it means that ionized form of calcium becomes low in the serum or plasma, because overall level of calcium remains the same. So whenever protein binds more calcium, so the protein bound form of calcium would increase and the ionized form of calcium would decrease. And the third example is rapid transfusion of citrated blood. As you already know, citrate is used as an anticoagulant and is mixed into the blood. So whenever we are transfusing a patient with the blood, there is a chance of chelation. But it normally does not occur if we do a slow transfusion. But in cases of rapid transfusion, the citrate present in the blood would chelate the calcium and could result in signs and symptoms of hypocalcemia like tetany. And the last main point is increased sequestration. So this occurs in cases like acute pancreatitis. In acute pancreatitis, enzymes like lipases are produced from the pancreas. What these lipases do, they increase fatty acid production, and this fatty acids binds calcium and forms soaps or saponification, and hence calcium is sequestered in the body. On the right are given the laboratory values. As I've told you before, serum calcium below 8.5 and less than 2.1 millimole per liter is diagnostic of hypocalcemia. Then there are written different clinical manifestations of hypocalcemia. There are different clinical manifestations, and the first ones are due to the increased neuromuscular excitability symptoms. So whenever there is increased neuromuscular excitability, the patient would present with signs and symptoms of paresthesias like numbness and tingling, skeletal muscle cramps, abdominal spasms and cramps, hyperactive reflexes, carpopedal spasms, tetany, laryngeal spasm, and positive Schwarzschild and Trousseau sign. I'm going to explain these further in the next slides. And then the cardiovascular manifestations include hypotension, signs of cardiac insufficiency, failure to respond to drugs that act by calcium mediated mechanisms, prolongation of QT interval, and in skeletal manifestation in chronic forms include osteomalacia, bone pain, deformities, and fractures. Okay, now I have divided the clinical manifestations into acute and chronic forms. So when there is acute hypocalcemia, the clinical manifestations are different. Mostly in acute cases, there are signs of increased neuromuscular excitability and cardiovascular effects. The signs of neuromuscular excitability includes paresthesia, tetany, laryngeal spasm, and seizures. And cardiovascular effects include hypotension, cardiac insufficiency, cardiac dysrhythmias. Schwastek signs and Trosso signs are also present in acute cases. What is Schwastek sign is that in a patient with hypocalcemia, when you tap the skin of their face around the temple, the spasm of muscles of lips, nose, and cheek may occur. And Trosso sign is that you inflate the cuff, the BP cuff on the arm of a patient, and a carpopedal spasm develops in the arm. What is a carpopedal spasm? It is the spasm of the muscles of the hand. So both these signs represent acute hypocalcemia. Then in cases of chronic hypocalcemia, skeletal changes and skin changes start to occur. Skeletal changes may include bone pain, fragility, deformity, and fractures. And skin changes may include the drying and scaling of skin, the nails become brittle, hair become dry, and the development of cataracts occurs. So what to do for the treatment of hypocalcemia? In case of acute hypocalcemia, it is considered to be an emergency, and IV calcium gluconate or calcium chloride are given to the patient. But in cases of chronic hypocalcemia, the first intervention to be done is to increase the dietary intake of calcium. That is followed by oral supplements, and then in some cases vitamin D could be given or synthetic parathyroid hormone could be given depending upon the cause of hypocalcemia. The next disorder is hypercalcemia. It is the plasma calcium concentration more than 10.5 mg per deciliter or more than 2.6 millimole per liter. A false increase in calcium could also be observed in cases of tourniquet effect. Tourniquet effect is when the patient's arm has been tourniqueted or for blood transfusion, and due to long tourniquet there may appear to be an increase in calcium levels. In cases of hyperalbuminemia and hyperglobulinemia, there may also appear to be an increase in calcium level, but this actually happens due to overall increase in calcium. The ionized form of calcium is not increased. This chart now illustrates all the different causes of hypercalcemia. Number one is the increased intestinal absorption. So whenever there is excessive vitamin D or there is excessive calcium in the diet, or a patient is taking large quantities of calcium along with antacids, these are different causes of increased intestinal absorption. The next point is increased bone resorption. So in case of patients with increased level of parathyroid hormones, there would be increased bone resorption, and so the serum levels of calcium would increase. The other causes include malignant neoplasm and prolonged immobilization. Due to prolonged immobilization, the demineralization of bones starts, and hence the serum calcium levels increase. The malignancy effect I would explain further. The third main point is decreased elimination. In case of thiazide diuretics, there is a decreased elimination of calcium and increased absorption of calcium is there. So in labs we would find a serum calcium above 10.5 or above 2.6 millimole per liters. What would be the clinical manifestations? There would be impaired ability to concentrate urine, and exposure of kidney to increased concentration of calcium would occur, and the following effects would be seen. The presence of polyuria, polydipsia, flank pain, signs of acute and chronic renal insufficiency, signs of kidney stones. The GI manifestations would include anorexia, nausea, vomiting, constipation. The neuromuscular effects would be muscle weakness and atrophy, ataxia, loss of muscle tone, and skeletal manifestations would be osteopenia, osteoporosis. CNS effects would be lethargy, personality and behavior changes, stupor, coma. And then the cardiovascular effects include hypertension, shortening of QT interval, and AV blocks. So this is again a representation of the same in clinical manifestations given in the table before. Another condition associated with hypercalcemia is hypercalcemic crisis. It is an acute increase in calcium level, and it may occur due to some malignancies or due to hyperparathyroidism. The signs and symptoms would include cardiac dysarrhythmias, oliguria, excessive thirst, volume depletion, fever, and altered mental status, and death may occur by cardiac arrest. Here I want to explain the point of malignancy. There are some malignancies in the body, like some cancers of the lung, where there is a production of a parathyroid hormone like peptide. Like, it is not actually parathyroid hormone, but it is a protein that is similar in structure to parathyroid hormone and acts on the same receptors as parathyroid hormones. And that is why there is increased level of calcium in the body in cases of malignancies, because it acts like parathyroid hormone and increases the serum level of calcium. Now, going to the treatment of hypercalcemia. The mainstay of treatment is rehydration, that is the fluid replacement of the patient. And another way is to increase urinary excretion of calcium. That is done through the use of diuretics, especially loop diuretics. Another way is to inhibit bone resorption. So the different drugs used are bisphosphonates and calcitonin, both of which inhibit osteoclastic activity. And other drugs include corticosteroids, mitramycin, and gallium nitrate. These are mainly anti-neoplastic drugs, and they aim to target the main issue, the underlying issue. And in severe cases, the dialysis may be the last option to treat hypercalcemia in the patient. Thank you.